Hey folks, Pat here from DNS. This Madison area fishing report is current as of June 23rd. Well, we've been hot and dry here all this last week. The dry spell just continues here in Madison at least. We really could use some rain. I think we've had maybe an hour of light rain in the entire month of June. So yeah, things are pretty dry at least here at the shop. Sounds like a chance of rain Sunday into Monday, but I guess we'll see if that actually materializes. And this heat and dry is actually going to kind of drive some of the things we'll talk about here in the report today, whether it's changing your tactics or changing your plans altogether. We'll talk about what's going on out there. So I guess just kind of get started. The buoy on Mendota this morning was reading 73.6 degrees after an actually pretty cool night last night. But yesterday it was 75.2, which is almost 10 degrees warmer than this time last week. I heard 76 degrees on Wabisa Wednesday, so water temps have come up quite a bit with this heat and drought we've been experiencing. And of course, you'll find warmer water than that when you get into shallow and protected areas. Generally around the chain, floating vegetation is still a problem, but it's much improved from a couple weeks ago. And water clarity in most places around town has been great. The blue-green algae has become less of a problem in most places. We got the Dane County Public Health website here, has the beach closings. Only Esther Beach over there on Lake Monona is closed right now. So good water clarity out there, and that's what I've been hearing in a lot of the reports I get here at the shop. Otherwise, on Mendota, bluegills are still on beds, but the spawn is winding down or done on the rest of the chain. And those fish are starting to move out deeper. Look for them in 10 to 15 feet of water. Usual redworms, spikes, waxies have been working well. But the gills also like the thunderbugs we've got in here at the shop. Speaking of thunderbugs, the perch are also going to love those once they get going here on Lake Mendota. And I have actually just yesterday heard a couple of reports of some folks finding some perch on where you can find a good weed line, but we'll talk about that a little more. Also, largemouth bass remain shallow, and smallmouth bass and walleye continue to move out deeper and are showing up in good numbers on mid-lake humps. As we move into summer here, leeches have been picking up a lot of those fish, but the traditional lures are also working well. Catfish action here on the north side has been tapering off, but folks are still getting fish for sure. All area rivers and streams are still running very low and clear with all this dry spell we've had. Get into a little more detail up here. Up on Cherokee, it's going to be a weedy mess, and it still is. If you launch here at the school road launch, you can get out to the channel and around and get some good topwater action out there. A lot of pike and bass that I've been hearing about. Catfish action continues to be strong down here at the 113 bridge, although it's not as hot and heavy as it was when they were spawning a couple weeks here, but folks are still getting fish. In fact, I got a nice report from a guy just this morning, a nice catfish he had caught down there. Out on Lake Mendota, like I said, the bluegills are on beds and spawning all around the lake. So that's, I guess, kind of the big news. Haven't heard anything for crappies lately, and perch are scattered, but like I said, I have just started to hear some fish being picked up if you can find a strong weed line somewhere. Largemouth bass action remains good shallow, and I've had a couple reports of some good topwater bite for smallmouth, mostly early in the morning. Otherwise, smallmouth bass and walleye continue to move out deeper. Look for those fish in 10 to 20 feet of water or so near shoreline breaks and mid-lake humps. So, your Dunn's bar, Second Point, Beerley bars have all been producing both walleye and smallmouth. Although I was talking to Noah Humfeld the other day, and he was finding walleyes suspended out over the deep water too. So, they're out there and they're moving around looking for that cooler water. I guess the white bass bite out here in Warner Bay, it sounded like it was picking up and getting hot, last week, and now I haven't really heard many reports this week. I don't know if the heat turned them off and moved them deeper. If I was looking for those fish, I would look a little deeper, maybe out in this like 40 feet of water out here, trolling over that, because I imagine this heat might be pushing those fish out deeper. I do still hear about some good reports of folks getting them trolling, but it's just been a little slow. Great baits for those fish are spinners, twister tails, crankbaits, but white and chartreuse seem to be the best colors for those fish. Fish down on Tenney Park has been good down at the locks, or the breakwall down here. The fishing below the locks has been kind of slow. That water's down to a trickle basically coming through there compared to what it was. But also been hearing about some nice largemouth bass in the Tenney Park Lagoon coming out of the lagoon over there. Down on Monona, I've been hearing about floating weeds still causing problems for trollers. You can still find some gills on beds, but most of those fish are off and hungry. Look for those fish out a little deeper in 10 to 15 feet of water near the bottom. When I was a customer of DNS, Gene clued me into the Mendota rig, or I'm sorry, Monona rig, which is great for panfish this time of year, especially on Monona. And it's very simple. It's just a sinker. You got your line, and you got a little rat finky down there with a spike on. Super easy rig to fish from a boat. Just drop it over the side when you get in that 10 to 15 feet of water. Let that sinker go all the way down to the bottom. This is like a number 5 sinker, maybe like 1/8 ounce, something like that. Sinker, just let it drop to the bottom. Pick it up the 6 inches of line that you got here, and as long as you're down there in that couple inches of the bottom, you'll likely get fish. So yeah, the old Monona rig is a super effective way to catch fish in that 10 to 15 feet of water. But also, just holding it off the side of the boat once they start to suspend out over deep water, which is, we'll come here after the 4th of July or so, they'll start moving out into the deep water. But yeah, handy little rig, and thanks to Gene for showing me that many years ago. Down on Monona Bay, I heard they got the weed cutters in here, and so it's a lot more fishable down there. Folks getting gills, some bass, some pike in there. Same thing in the triangles up to the Monona Terrace wall. Been hearing about good gill action, although you got to sort through a lot of small fish. The crappies do show up during low light, so early morning and late afternoon into evening has been a good time for crappies down there. I haven't heard much about muskies. But with these warmer temps coming up, you're really going to want to keep an eye on the water temps. They say you shouldn't fish muskies if the water gets up to 80 degrees. So keep an eye on those temps. Those fish have a hard time recovering if you're catching them in that warm water. So maybe find something else to do if the water gets too warm. Otherwise, there were a bunch of gills down here in Turville Bay and Weechawuk Bay, formerly known as Squaw Bay. These channels are always a pretty safe bet for panfish. Haven't heard much out of Upper Mud lately, but I'm sure the water's real warm up there. So the dredge hole is probably your best bet to find any cooler water to look for fish. Otherwise, Lake Farm fish should be start moving out to this little bit deeper water out here. Hog Island's was a pretty good area to check for panfish, but also walleyes in that little deeper water where the break is down there. Got the rock pile down on the south end, and the South Bay is probably pretty weedy now, but usually some good panfish down there. Also been hearing about some walleyes trolling out from Babcock. Speaking of Babcock, it sounds like the launch there is still being taken up, a couple stalls at least, taken up by the county that's in there dredging that out. Otherwise, moving down to Kegonsa, I hear the water down there still nice and clear. Been hearing about some good bluegill action on weed edges, and also the same with walleye weed edges and drops over here near the state park. Has been good for folks over there. I haven't heard a ton out of the Rock River or Lake Koshkonong, to be specific, but some fish down here at Indian Ford. At the dam there, nice mixed bag. I've heard about flathead catfish showing up there and up at Jefferson. But on Koshkonong, I haven't heard much. I'm sure crawler rigs are a pretty safe bet this time of year as we move into summer. Crawler rigs are a great setup for catching walleyes. Also, the Jefferson Dam, like I mentioned, nice mixed bag of fish to be had there. And, it's some flathead catfish coming out of there too. Over to Beaver Dam, great catfish bite over there. Really good eater size fish. Crystal Lake, have been hearing about some good yellow bass action coming off there, and some crappies at night. The action's been picking up. Over to the Wisconsin River, it's really maybe a better term for it right now would be the Wisconsin Creek, because it's just water is real shallow. I think the CFS this morning was like 4,200, which is it's usually between 6 and 10 at least this time of year. So it's real low with these dry conditions we've had. But folks are getting fish up at the dams. Lake Wisconsin fishing has been great. I've been hearing about good walleye action, panfish shallow, crappies down near Moon Valley, near Wood. I've been hearing about gills on the grade and in the fingers yet. Great trolling for walleyes, mostly shallow it sounds like. Crawler harnesses and some on cranks have been working really well. I guess upstream we got I haven't heard much out of Portage. A nice mixed bag of fish at the Dells. up to Castle Rock and Petenwell dams. Always going to find a good mixed bag of fish there. I heard about some flatheads showing up there too, so those are always fun. And of course, gigantic. Otherwise, trolling for white bass and walleye on Petenwell has been pretty productive. I heard about also some crappies near Wood over there. The Mississippi River sounds like the water levels continue to come down, and walleye and white bass are being caught in main river current seams. And I'm hearing about some crappie near shore and near Wood. Over to Milwaukee, not a lot going on over there on the Big Lake side of things, but I am hearing about some good smallmouth action in the Milwaukee River. Otherwise, as far as trout goes, again with the water temperatures that I've been talking about is another factor for trout. So this is Fly Lords is like a online trout magazine. They have a cool, a little graph here that shows water temps and when to fish for trout. And I wish it would just please stay there. Sorry about that. So where did that go? Okay, so 67 degrees and up, you're going to want to stay off the stream. Trout don't recover well from that. Below 65 is fine, but you get up towards 67, you're going to want to keep off the streams, because those fish are real sensitive to being caught. Being stressed in those conditions. And then the article goes on to talk about other things you can do, trying to land fish quickly, fish early, find cold water, so like tiny tributaries, or find new fish. Here in Wisconsin, we've got great carp fishing, great smallmouth fishing on the river, or just give them a break for the day. So anyway, I'd encourage people to carry a thermometer with them. And if that water starts getting close to 67 degrees, go find something else to do. But generally, otherwise, around the area, streams are running low and clear. I was out with my son on Saturday. We got some fish on small hoppers and still on beetles. So terrestrials are a pretty safe bet on the dry fly side of things this time of year, and that'll continue on into fall. Otherwise, if fish aren't looking up, woolly buggers, nymphs can be super effective. And on the spinning gear side of things, you got your standard Panther Martins, tube jigs, Rapalas, all that good stuff. Or hard to argue with the effectiveness of a redworm under a bobber. So I guess that pretty much does it for the report today. Post your comments and catches below. If you want us to expand on anything we talked about here, feel free to call the shop with any questions you might have, 241-4225. Otherwise, thanks for tuning in, and we will talk to you next week. Take care.